Piracy has been going on for centuries. Some made a lucrative business out of it, and others met their demise at the mercy of the sea. Let's take a look at 4 notorious pirates that terrorized the waters. Gong Ning was a military general serving under the warlord Sun Quan in the late Eastern Han dynasty. He always wanted to be a warrior since he was a child, so he gathered a group of young men with him as their chief and engaged in piracy. They were armed with either bows or crossbows and had feathers in their hats and tied bells on their bodies. When the bells were heard, people knew Gong Ning and his gang was nearby. Gong Ning's plundering and murderous ways made him very famous throughout the bar commandery. On one occasion, he tied his own servant to a tree and shot him with arrows. On land, he and his gang traveled by riding on horses or in chariots. On water, they sailed with their ships linked together. They were dressed in elaborate and flamboyant garments to attract attention wherever they went. When they stopped at a certain location, they used silk to tie their boats, and when they were departing, they cut the silk and abandoned it as a display of their extravagance. Local officials treated Gan Ning generously. In return, he befriended them and showed genuine feelings towards them. On the other hand, those who treated him badly suffered the fate of being robbed of their possessions by him and his gang, and even government officials were not spared. Gong Ning led the life of a pirate for over 20 years. After a few years later, he became a military general under the warlord Sun Quan and stopped plundering ships. The ancient Mediterranean was full of piracy. All those living near water had to deal with it sometime or another. Dionysius, the pirate, originated from the town of Phocaea, an Ionian settlement in modern Turkey. His adulthood was full of struggles. It was the period when the Ionian cities rebelled against Persians. Dionysius was in command of the Ionian contingent. When he arrived at the naval camp of Lade, he saw that his men displayed low morale and suffered from a lack of discipline. He thought his men were unprepared for the impending battle, so he called a general assembly among the camp and said, "Now, for our affairs are on the razor's edge, men of Ionia, whether we are to be free or slaves. So, if you will bear hardships now, you will suffer temporarily, but be able to overcome your enemies." He then began ordering his men to perform several hours of martial exercises a day. This, however, made his men extremely tired and weak for the battle that they were about to face. In fact, they were so tired they refused to fight with the Persians. Despite this setback, Dionysius continued fighting the Persians, sinking 3 warships before being forced to retreat during the final hours of the battle. In the end, the battle ended up being a disaster. When he started to flee, Dionysius sailed his small navy westward, eventually coming to Sicily, where they established themselves. Immediately from this base of operations, they began preying on ships near the area. He became a prolific pirate, but due to his friendship between Phocaea and Greece, he left traveling Grecian merchants alone. John Crabbe was from a small town of Muide in Flanders. It's probable that Crabbe began his career earlier. However, the first notice of him as a pirate is in 1305, when he attacked the war de boer of Dordrecht at La Rochelle in the Bay of Biscay. He seized the cargo, which included 160 tons of wine, and then he burned the ship down and kidnapped the sailors. His key to success was that he built a catapult on board his ship's deck. In the spring of 1310, he seized another ship carrying clothes, jewels, gold, silver, and other goods, worth 2,000 pounds at the time, which were the property of Alice of Hainlet, Countess Marshall. In 1311, Crabbe seized 2 merchant ships from Newcastle on Tyne, bound for Flanders with a cargo of 89 sacks of wool. In 1316, Crabbe seized 2 ships owned by merchants of Great Yarmouth. In December of that year, Crabbe seized another ship, La Bona Navis de la Strode, off the Isle of Thanet. The Bona Navis was carrying a valuable cargo of wine intended for the English market. Crabbe was now notorious. In 1332, however, war broke out between England and Scotland. At this point, he was captured by English soldiers. Edward III, the King of England at the time, however, took a liking to Crabbe and kept him there. Crabbe helped Edward III during the siege of Berwick, for which he was eventually pardoned for all his crimes on both land and sea. Samuel Bellamy was a pirate who operated in the 18th century. He was known as the Prince of Pirates, or Black Sam Ballamy. Born in 1689, he was the youngest of 6 other siblings. He became a sailor at a young age. In his late teens, he joined the Royal Navy and fought in several battles. After a few years, he traveled to Cape Cod around 1715. According to an abundance of local lore on the subject, it is believed that he took up an affair with the local beauty, Goody Hallett, also known as the Witch of the Wellfleet. In early 1716, he went with a group of men to seek the vast treasures on the Florida coast from the Spanish wreck of the 1715 treasure fleet. It was found out during this time that Goody was pregnant by Samuel. It is said that she gave birth to a son and hid the child in a barn for warmth, while she foraged for food. And when she returned, she found that the child had choked to death on the straw. She was then arrested for the child's murder and imprisoned in the old jail of Barnstable, where it is said to be haunted by her. In 1717, Samuel was sailing towards South America when he spotted the ship Muide, built in England in 1715 as a state-of-the-art 300-ton, 102 feet long English slave ship with 18 cannons and with speeds up to 13 knots. The Muide was on its maiden voyage in 1716 and had just finished the second leg of Atlantic slave trade. It was loaded with a fortune in gold, indigo, Jesuit's bark, ivory, and other precious trade goods from the sale of 312 slaves. Samuel then chased the ship for 3 straight days before getting close enough to fire. After a single shot, Captain Lawrence Prince surrendered the Muide by lowering its flag. Samuel then rewarded Captain Lawrence for the lack of resistance by trading his ship for the Muide as an act of generosity. Captain Samuel Ballamy, now known as Black Bellamy, was well known as a tall, strong, well-mannered, and very tidy man. He liked expensive clothes, especially black coats. His favorite weapons were 4 dueling pistols that he always carried in his sash. As captain, his leadership style was almost democratic. His crew was very fond of him, sometimes even referring to him as Robin Hood of the Sea, and themselves as Robin Hood's men. Captain Bellamy was also a good tactician. Usually he had 2 ships under his control. His flagship was powerful with many cannons, and the second one was light but fast, which made a good balance. With coordinated attacks, they managed to capture ships easily without harming them. Just 2 months after acquiring the Muide, however, they got caught up in a storm and the ship capsized quickly, killing all but 2 of the 145-man crew. Though his known career as a pirate captain lasted little more than a year, he and his crew captured at least 53 ships under his command, making him the wealthiest pirate in recorded history. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more content.